All right, so to continue with the story, I met Chris, and Chris was, like I said, I met her. She was, walking the street. She was basically doing the prostitute thing, but she said she was never a prostitute before. This is her first time ever trying, just like walking the street. This is during the daytime. She was in college and she was 19, and I believed her because she explained that she never really, this is her first time ever trying it, but she never actually had sex with anybody. She was just like doing it because she's eccentric or whatever. But I calculated it, and I was like, she's 19, but I was like, I'm not gonna have intercourse with her without a condom because I don't know. But she says she's 19. That's pretty young. So even if she did do prostitution before, it's not likely she did it for long. And she's saying that she has never done it before, and she seemed cool. And so, I decided but anyways, I got her number, but she called me, and like I said, I was just like, well, I never learned how to cook. I was kicked out of my house. My mom and dad did everything for me growing up. They quote unquote spoiled me. And then when they kicked me out because of the shoot away machine and the problems, they had never taught me how to do anything. So I basically, I was like, well, I'll use Chris to kind of teach me stuff. Like she could teach me how to cook, and like, I never, and I had got my $25,000 check from the lawsuit of Risperdal, the shot that they forced me with. So I was like, well, I'll travel around and I'll learn how to use like hotels, like hotels.com, and I'll learn how to do all this stuff. And I'll do it with Chris, and I'll go to like Venice Beach. I never do that stuff, and I'll go around with Chris and we can go shopping. And she, I'm not good at, buying clothes because I don't have any fashion sense. I'm an INTP. My sensory function is the lowest, and I'm in Enneagram 5W4, and I just like to learn incompetence. But I always just studied, in my listening to audiobooks or whatever, and I was like, well, I'll start learning some stuff with Chris. And when I was driving with Chris, I would listen to like stuff on the Enneagram and on Myers-Briggs, because I got her Enneagram. I had her take the test, and like I said, at first I didn't know what her personality type was, and at first, like I hadn't had too much experience with girlfriends. So like, with Katie, I like that a lot because she actually had a daughter, so I never had to spend any time with her. I could spend all day studying, and then since she's with her daughter and she had a job, so I would just see her at night, and I like that. But with Chris, I was like, well, I'll just, when I spend time with Chris, I'll do things that I don't usually normally do. Like we'll go to Venice Beach, or and I'll try out things that I wouldn't normally usually do, and I'll learn those types of things, So, it gives me an excuse to do things I wouldn't normally do. So, and like I said though, I had studied that audiobook that called, like, I forget what it's called, but it was about the guy was talking about how women like guys with a lot of social circles and social capital and a lot of friends and stuff. So I was like, well, I didn't have many friends, but they said, just having a few friends is good. So, but my friends were like my friend Bill, who's kind of mentally ill, my friend Roger, who's kind of mentally ill, and a couple other friends, and they're all kind of mentally ill. So, but I tried to introduce Chris to try to show her that I'm cool and that I have good social capital. But then, when I introduced her to Bill, Bill's like, oh, Ryan's a piece of shit. He's talking all this shit about me. And Chris is like, you're friends with Bill? And I was friends with him because Bill's an ENFJ and he's funny. And, I'm an INTP, and ENFJs and INTPs, they tend to get along. But, still, he talks a lot of shit about me. That's true. And he was talking shit about me in front of Chris. And he was talking to her about the abortion that Katie had, or the miscarriage, and, about my family situation. And he's talking all this shit. And then Chris is like, why would you hang out with someone who talks all this shit about you, And she didn't really like Bill at all. And she also thought Bill was a white supremacist. And Bill kind of is, but Bill was the one who kind of brought me out of my leftism, because he's like, dude, Ryan, you're not black, dude. You're not, you're white, dude. So, what's up with your like white supremacist thing? And that he helped me to kind of recognize the anti-whiteness that I had, But so, I had bad friends. And so at first Chris seemed to like me. She seemed to like me, especially when she saw me play basketball. At first she seemed to sort of like me, and then she saw me play basketball, and then she really liked me. But then she starts seeing that, my friends are pieces of shit. They seem mentally ill. And then also she's, hears from my friend that, that my family won't talk to me. Bill tells her that, and Bill's telling her this stuff about, about Katie and the restraining order and all this stuff. And So Chris is kind of like, huh? So again, then Chris starts, disrespecting me. I started to feel like, she started to treat me a little different. So she started disrespecting me, and I called it out. But she's like, well, your friends disrespect you. Bill disrespects you. Why do you hang out with Bill if he disrespects you? So, but again, she's kind of immature. She thinks, she says that she's an INFJ, so she likes to mirror. So she mirrors. So she's thinking like, oh, you must like to be disrespected, Ryan. No, I don't fucking like being disrespected. She's like, well, then why do you hang out with Bill? Well, Bill's my only fucking friend. It's not that, that I like that shit, but that's this case I'm in my life at this point because of the trauma that I went through with my family and the the trauma that came out about that with my crazy Facebook and, all the stuff that kind of emerged from that. And also, like I said, I was confused for a long time. My grandpa confused me. I was confused. I was anti-white. I was like, then my grandpa confused me more and made me white supremacist. And I was just confused. So I ended up being isolated and alienated, And then so Chris at first seemed to like me, but then she starts to notice this, like, oh, so, you have shitty friends. Oh, and you're alienated from your own family. So then she started to treat me with a little bit disrespect, And then it's like, then I'm like, and then she starts to figure out the quadrant model, and then she's thinking that maybe I'm a little bit crazy with the quadrant model. So she's trying to mirror that, like, oh, maybe you're crazy, so I'll be crazy too. And I'm like, dude, I'm not fucking crazy. I discovered the theory of everything. But then she starts being disrespectful to me, and she starts acting a little bit crazy. So then I started to get a little bit out of hand where she starts yelling at me, and she starts disrespecting me. So finally, after, I would say a few months of being with her, I broke up with her. I was like, yo, you're disrespecting me too much. She's being bossy. She's being disrespectful. She's, starting fights and stuff. And again, and I do feel like a big part of it, like at first I felt like she liked me more, but then I feel like the disrespect started to come because she starts to see like, oh, you have shitty friends who disrespect you. Oh, maybe you like being disrespected. Oh, your own family doesn't talk to you. Oh, maybe there is problems with you. Maybe I can disrespect you. And she starts, her respect level decreases. At first it's high, but then it decreases. Then she thinks that she can get away with treating me with disrespect and being disrespectful to me and treating me bad. So I was just like, dude, fuck this, dude. You're going to be disrespecting me. You're going to be acting like that. Then fuck, I'm done with you. I don't want to be with you. And plus I already got this impression that she was a little bit crazy and she was, she would, and when I first was with her, she would dress like very promiscuously and still seemed like a prostitute, So I was like, that was like a red flag. But then I think when she saw me play basketball, then she started to like me a little bit more. She started being a little bit better. But then again, like I said, then she starts to realize, oh, you have shitty friends. Oh, and again, but maybe I was trying to make things happen. I wasn't in the flow. And what I tried to do is I tried to bring her to brought her to meet my friend at Johnny, who's like a drug user and kind of like seems a little bit mentally ill or like my friend Bill. And like, I'm trying to show her that I'm cool and I have friends and stuff. Right. And I'm not just, but she's an INFJ and she would have been happy if I was just isolated and just like studying and stuff. But I didn't know that, I wanted to make myself look cool. And I thought girls wanted to, but this is kind of before I knew she was an INFJ too. But I wanted to be like, oh yeah, I have friends and I'm cool. And, but so I was, as my grandpa would say, I tried to make things happen. I wasn't in the flow. I was doing calculative, actions, as opposed to just being in the flow or whatever. And I tried to make myself cool and, but then she's like, dude, your friends suck. And also another thing was, like I said, I didn't like to spend time I'd never liked to have a relationship because I wanted to spend all my time studying. But I used Chris as a excuse to do things I wouldn't normally do, like go to the Venice Beach or go to Utah or, start using hotels or go to different stores where we can buy stuff. Cause I would never do that if it wasn't for Chris, and I had the money to buy stuff, buy clothes and stuff, which I was never able to do cause I don't have any fashion sense. And, she has fashion sense. She's a girl and INFJs have more sensory fashion sense, So I was just like, using an excuse to do all that stuff. But, really I just wanted to study. So, but then, later I found out when I would sit, she would be staying with me and I would just like start studying and she apparently liked that because she's an INFJ and they like that. They quote unquote like nerds. So, but I didn't realize that she would like that, so I should have done that from the beginning, but I guess I was trying to make things happen and try to be cool, and, but then anyways, I ended up getting her pregnant. But, one thing that she would do is she smoked weed a lot and she would smoke, cigarettes, but I didn't know that she was pregnant. So, I had her have a blood test to make sure she didn't have any STDs, and she didn't have any STDs. She went to the Planned Parenthood and all that, and she had got the STD test and all that, and she had said she got it from her doctor. So I was just like, okay, well, we can have intercourse then and I ended up getting her pregnant. And like I said, I wanted to get her pregnant because I thought that if I had a baby, that would help me get in contact with my mom and dad. And I also wanted a baby maybe for ego reasons. You know, my grandpa would say, well, maybe you weren't in the flow. Yeah, probably I was in the flow for ego reasons. One thing I thought, I wanted to go to Israel, and I thought if I had a baby, you know, if I die in Israel, then if I had a baby, at least my legacy would live on. And, you know, ego motivations of having a baby to be like, you know, oh yeah, I am kind of cool. You know, I can get a girl and get her pregnant, you know, kind of like, because I've been isolated and I've been alienated, and to try to compensate, I want to be like, yeah, look, I have a sexy girlfriend and I did, you know, get her pregnant and stuff like that. So, you know, I ended up getting her pregnant. She ended up, but this was the thing, is I didn't know she was pregnant, and she was still smoking the weed and smoking the cigarettes. And, you know, but again, like at times she wouldn't listen, and she would, you know, she would like intentionally start fights. She would intentionally start arguments and was acting kind of toxic. And I was kind of having enough with it, but at the same time, I understand why too, because, you know, I was kind of out of it. So I ended up going to, like, you know, I wanted a little space from where I ended up going to Texas for the Eclipse thing with some with my friends they all do drugs. I don't do any drugs, but I went with them. And, you know, but I'm trying to call Chris because, you know, I've been isolated, I've been alienated. You know, my mom and dad won't talk to me. Chris knows that, you know, but I want to be like, you know, hey, Chris, I have cool friends, you know, I'm with cool friends, and, you know, we're in Texas, and you see, I'm not a loser, and I have friends, and I'm like cool, and we're doing. So again, I'm trying to make things happen a little bit, and that probably backfired, because Chris is like, you know, I'm doing it too much, and Chris is like, you know, Ryan, you're kind of like freaking me out. And plus I went with the drug users, and it kind of scared her, because, you know, they're driving around when they're on drugs and stuff, and it was a very dangerous trip, you know. So she's stressed out, and she's, you know, she thought that she might have been pregnant, but she didn't know at the time. So she was getting a baby carriage, but, you know, she was going in the sun and getting a baby carriage. She was all stressed out. She was probably smoking a lot because she was stressed out. And another thing was, I wanted to meet my mom and dad. I wanted to introduce my mom and dad to her, because I was like, you know, me and Chris have been together for like 4 months, but my mom was like, no, we're not going to meet her. We're never going to see you. Just, you know, same old thing. And you know, that would have been helpful, but, you know, again, like I'm stuck in this situation where I'm isolated and alienated, and Chris, you know, finds that out, and Chris is like, you know, that probably increases her disrespect for me, you know, like, you know, in her, because in her mind, she doesn't know the whole story. And that's part of the reason why I started saying this story, was to get, you know, was I started making these videos, was so that she would listen to them and be like, okay, so you're not, you know, a piece of shit, Ryan, you know. So you do, you know, because again, like I said, she started disrespecting me, and I broke up with her. And that was when I started making these videos, because I wanted to show her, like, hey, stop disrespecting me, because listen, I know, because I know in her mind she's thinking like, oh yeah, your family, you know, disowned you and stuff. You know, you must be a piece of shit. You must be like maybe mentally ill and stuff. And I had to make the story to explain my background, and explain it was a shoot away machine, and it really was, and explain how my grandpa made things worse, and, you know, all this stuff. And, you know, my grandpa did help, you know, he helped me with the philosophy and everything, but he didn't help this family situation. And you know, the proof of the pudding is that my mom and dad won't talk to me. And, you know, that's not cool. It's not justifiable. It's not cool. So, you know, she's disrespecting me a little bit, and you know, it was becoming toxic, you know, and so, but then I ended up coming back, and, you know, when I was with her, I was like, you know, hey, Chris, you know, but like I said, you know, I was hanging out with Bill, who was like mentally ill. She didn't like him. She thought he was a white supremacist, which he kind of is. And, you know, I was with Roger, and, you know, again, like, I didn't want to waste time too much with her, because I want to be studying. So I hang out with Bill as an excuse to kind of get away from her, but so I can study more, and so I can do all this stuff. And you know, it's not healthy. I don't have my family support. I'm isolated. I have bad friends. So, you know, and it leads to a bad situation for her, you know. But then, you know, then she's smoking weed and stuff, and I tell her, you know, Chris, you know, we've been having unprotected sex. It's possible that you're pregnant. You know, it's best that you don't smoke weed and do cigarettes. And she's like, I do what I want to do. You stress me out. I'm going to do what I want to do. Like, don't tell me what to do, type of thing. And again, she's acting toxic, disrespectful to me. She's not listening to me. You know, and it was because she did have a low level of respect for me, especially because at that time she didn't know my story. You know, she didn't know about what happened with my family. She didn't know about all this stuff. And I just started making the videos. So I'm like, you know, so she's not respecting me too much. And in her mind, she's probably thinking, yeah, well, Katie probably had the abortion because, you know, you're a piece of shit and you have bad friends, and, you know, but so she doesn't have respect for me, right? And you know, she doesn't know I discovered theory of everything again. So it's like, it's a tough situation. So I'm like, well, Chris, you know, if you find out you're pregnant, you're going to definitely stop smoking and doing weed, right? And she's like, yes. But she's like, but you know, you stress me out, and I'm going to be smoking my weed, and I'm going to be smoking my cigarettes and stuff. So I was like, okay. But I was like, I don't want you to, but there's nothing I can do. I can't force you, you know. There's nothing I can't, like, you know, beat her up and do it. I'll go to jail. So I was just like, okay, well, I hope that you're not pregnant right now, even though we do both want you to be pregnant, you know, but you're smoking and that's not good. But you know, she's like, I do what I want to do. And in her mind, she's like, she told me the statistic later. She was like, Ryan, like 70% of women nowadays smoke weed, or like, you know, 60% of the population smokes weed. And I'm like, yeah, but if you could possibly be pregnant, you should be smoking weed. And that's, you know, and weed used to be illegal. It doesn't make smoking weed okay, you know, especially if you could be pregnant. But, you know, she's young, she's dumb. You know, she's black, so she's listening to the black culture, and the black culture glorifies smoking weed and acting crazy and acting stupid, and she tries to emulate that a little bit. You know, that's why she wanted to do the prostitution because of stuff, because all the like girl rappers are like, I'm selling coochie, and that's one of the songs she would listen to. And it's like, we're living in a toxic society, and she's also building upon that. And she also probably has some little mental issues as well, you know. But, you know, I liked her. She was smart. She was funny. And she, you know, she showed me a lot of stuff. And she was intelligent. And I enjoyed being with her. But at the same time, like I said, I wanted to study. And things were becoming a little bit toxic. And she could be toxic. So, but anyways, then she found out she was pregnant. But, well, she calls me and she says, Ryan, I'm in the emergency room. And she said, and I'm like, well, what happened? She's like, well, you know, the doctor thinks I might have an STD. And I'm like, what? And she's like, did you give me an STD? I'm like, no, I didn't give you an STD. But then she finds out that she's pregnant, but the embryo or whatever, or the ovum or whatever is in her fallopian tube, and she's having like a late pregnancy, or I forget what they call it, you know. But you know, the egg hasn't really released yet. So then, you know, I was upset, because then I looked it up, and I looked up, you know, if you smoke weed and smoke cigarettes, it increases your chance of having a late implantation by like 80% or something. So then, you know, I was upset, but I was like, well, I hope you're okay and everything. But, you know, she had already been being toxic to me. She had already been, you know, doing things that I felt like were getting on my nerves. Like, she wanted to intentionally fight with me. And like I said, I felt like a big part of that was my family wouldn't talk to me. She had low respect for me. I had bad friends who talked shit about me. And then I'd be like, you know, don't disrespect me. She's like, well, Bill disrespects you. How come you hang out with Bill? And it's like, because I'm in a bad situation. I discovered theory of everything, but people don't fucking know that. I discovered theory of everything, but I've been disowned by my family. You know, it's like, it's a bad situation, but that doesn't give you the justification to act like that. So my grandpa would say that she had, you know, she was expressing a low level of software, but she was trying to mirror, you know, and she thought I was crazy. She didn't know about the quadrilateral. So she's thinking like, well, maybe if I mirror him and act crazy as well and stuff. No, I don't like that shit. I discovered theory of everything. I don't need this shit. I discovered theory of everything. I don't need bullshit, you know? So, but anyways, she ended up being pregnant. But then, you know, a couple days later, I was thinking in my head, I was like, well, this is a late implantation. I start looking up the statistics, and they're like, if there's late implantation, the possibilities of, you know, of a birth defects like increase dramatically, like huge increase of possible birth defects. And I was like, dude. And I was like, but in my mind, I'm like, you know, if she was having late implantation and I knew she wasn't smoking weed and smoking cigarettes, I'd be cool. I'd be like, well, you know, just go on and have it. But I was like, because I know that this is most likely due to her smoking weed and cigarettes when she was, you know, when the egg was going toward the fallopian tubes or whatever, I told her, you know, if the doctors say that this is late implantation, Chris, and the baby's likely going to have birth defects, I do want you to have an abortion, because I don't want to have a drug baby. You know, if it wasn't due to the drugs, I don't want abortions. I don't want that. No way. But if I know that it's because of drug use, then yes, that would be one of the situations where I would be like, I don't want to bring that type of suffering into the world, you know? So I was just like, so, and I told her, but then, you know, she's a J witness. Her family's J witness. So she's like, no, you want me to have an abortion? I was like, no, I don't want you to have an abortion. But I'm saying, if I want to talk to the doctor and I want to see I want to see the, what are they called? The ultrasounds. I want to see what he says about this situation. She's like, no, I'm not going to. But, you know, I admit that I was mean and I was angry with her when I was typing this stuff. And I shouldn't have done that. And the way that I typed it was not nice. And I got angry. But, you know, I was very stressed at the time, you know, because I was thinking in my mind, like, I don't want to have a drug baby, you know. So, but then she's like, you want me to have an abortion? And then she starts going on Facebook. And again, she's immature. She's young. And she starts, saying all this stuff. My boyfriend wants me to have an abortion, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, no, I don't. I want to talk to the doctor. She's like, no, you're not going to talk to the doctor. And then she starts going crazy, but she's already a little bit unstable. But now she starts to hate me. And she's like, this is why Katie had an abortion, because you're a piece of shit. And, this is why your family got rid of you, because you're evil. You're an evil person. And again, I hadn't made these. That's part of the reason why I made these videos, so I can, try to show her, like, no, I'm not an evil person. You don't know my story. You don't know my background. And regardless, being, the disrespect that she's showing me is not cool. But I'm telling her, listen, I just want to talk to the doctor. Can I just talk to the doctor? And, and I just, I don't want an abortion if the doctor thinks that since you smoke the weed and the cigarettes, if the doctor thinks that it's not going to be too big of a problem for the baby, then I don't want you to have an abortion. But if the doctor does say that, this late implantation is going to, that the baby is like 98% chance going to have terrible birth defects, I'm like, yes, you should probably have an abortion. And it's not because I'm for abortions. It's because I'm not for, I told you not, and I'm telling you, I told you not to do drugs, but you don't listen. And that's the thing I was trying to say. Like, that's because she was being toxic and she wouldn't listen to me because she didn't respect me, So I was like, you don't fucking listen. And that's a problem. And I'm like, so is my ego. I'm like, see, I told you so, And I was getting frustrated about her disrespecting me like that, And I wanted to like prove a point, I'm like, I told you to fucking listen to me, and now you made a mistake, and I felt bad for her because it's like, she's probably addicted to cigarettes, she's addicted to this stuff, and we're in a toxic culture that gets people addicted to this stuff, or that promotes smoking weed and stuff, and all that. So I was just telling her, like, listen, you made a mistake. I told you not to. You should have fucking listened, but she didn't listen. But it's okay. But I was just like, but I shouldn't have been so mean about it. And then, because I really liked her, but then, then she turned on me especially, and then she started to really hate me, and she started to be venomous toward me, and then she starts posting pictures or posting stuff about me, and like, then that was when things started to really go downhill with me and her. So I'll continue with that.